One of the reasons I cannot stand the ANC and Ramaphosa is because of the lawlessness they've brought to this country. The lawlessness and the lack of order in this country is brought by the ANC. Because I remember when I was a bit young and we had post boxes outside, we had telecom prepaid phones. My dad would give me a key and I walk down about 5 minutes down to the post boxes, open the box, get the letters, close it, knowing that nobody's going to vandalize it. Out in the open. Telecom public phones. I mean, when I was studying in Pretoria, all over Pretoria, CBD, Arcadia, anywhere you could look, Hatfield, we had telecom public phones, even in the townships. Nobody was vandalizing them because we understood the value of infrastructure and how we benefit from it. So what this ANC has done is they've imported millions and millions of illegal immigrants who have no value, who don't have any concept of the value of our infrastructure, and they're stripping our country to the bone. So one of the reasons I cannot stand Ramaphosa, I cannot stand that man because of what he has done to this country, this beautiful country with so much potential. And what he has done is he has downgraded us to a third world dump where anybody can do anything anywhere with no consequences. And you know what? I'm tired of hearing privileged people come on platforms and talk about how harsh we are with illegal immigrants. Have you ever lived in the township? Imagine living in a house and next door to your house, 7 men move in. You've never met them before. You don't know who they are. And you've got 4-year-old daughters running around the house. How would you feel about that? In the same house. Most township houses are about 10 meters by 20 meters. That's the size of the stand. So if you multiply that by a million, that's the situation we have right now in South Africa with the townships. So going back to Ramaphosa, what I found out about Ramaphosa is that he's selfish and he's behaving like a typical politician. Where I remember the last time the ANC couldn't pay wages and salaries for their staff, and people were asking questions about Ramaphosa is a billionaire. Why doesn't he get some money and pay the staff? He won't do it because he's selfish. Why does Ramaphosa stuff money inside his couch? Dollars in the millions inside his couch? Because he's a selfish human being and he's a politician. These people are not interested in solving any problems. They're interested in piling up money for themselves and their families. They're not interested in making our country better and great. They're interested in building their own family wealth. That's what they're there for. And that brings me to the second point that I want to make. I want to keep this video very short. I started this heartful journey about a year now. And I've spoken to, call it 100 people on the phone. And we discuss about what Heartful is about, what I'm trying to achieve, how we cannot fix our country. We cannot develop our country until we can deal with the issue of law and order. And I've come to a very, very personal realization about how humans actually behave. And I'm not dissing anybody, but I want to tell you the truth about what happens in this country when people do nothing about it. So I've got my plans, I talk to people, and I get guaranteed pledges from 10 people. I gotta make sure that we have all the compliance done. We have to make sure that you've got that documentation to make sure that everything is legit. The minute it is time to pull the trigger and get this bus on the road, 9 of them were nowhere to be found. Only one person came through. So the point I'm trying to make about this personal experience is that as much as we look at politicians and say politicians are selfish, they don't want to help the country, they behave just like you. We all behave just like politicians. Let me ask you a question. If you live in Steyn City or Lawn Hill or Four Ways or Danefern, have you ever been to Deep Sloot? Have you driven through Deep Sloot and identified the one thing that you can do to help one person or a group of people in the Deep Sloot? If you stay in Sandton, have you gone back to Alex, just over the highway, by the way, and looked at Alex and see how they live over there and what you can do to make a difference in one place? If you stay in Camps Bay and Stellenbosch, if you've gone to Khayelitsha and see what life is like over there and identify one thing that you can do, just one positive thing. Because this is what happens to us as humans. And I've experienced this myself. I'm 44 years old. And I don't think 10 years ago, I was thinking the way I'm thinking. I was happy to drive through my estate gates, get into a warm home, have a nice lekker meal, watch my favorite program with my family, get into a warm bed, wake up in the morning, take a hot shower, and get in my nice car and drive and do my business. Most of us South Africans live just like that, where we have resigned ourselves to the problems that are experienced by millions and millions of South Africans that are stuck in the townships. While I'm enjoying that life, that estate life with security and all sorts of protection around me, somebody, a family of three, is living in a 2 meters by 2 meters shack with no floor to speak of in the middle of winter. The question I'm asking you is, if we call politicians selfish, are you not selfish yourself? Because one thing that you must understand about changing the country, it's never about the government or politicians, it's about us. We've identified the issues that we have in the country. We've identified the spots that we can make a difference in. But we have to take action. If we don't take action, the politicians are counting on us not taking action. Because that's how they behave. People are happy to live in all these, like, I mean, I'm thinking about the same way I'm asking the question about Dane Fern and Sandton. If you stay in Waterfall Estate, have you ever gone to Ivory Park and see what life is like over there? Have you ever lived in Ivory Park with people that have just crossed the border and you don't know who's the former criminal, you don't know what is going on? Anything can happen at any time. There are no street lights to speak of anymore. What have you done in your life? What have you done with the resources that you have to make a difference, even if it's one person? Who's the one person that you dragged out of a situation and made their lives better? Because it's all good and well for us to get into comment sections and talk about how selfish politicians are. What have you done in your own personal life? If you live a privileged life, and trust me, when I talk about privilege, I know what privilege is because I grew up in a rural area. I spent the first 17 years of my life without electricity. So I know the difference between privilege and disadvantage. I grew up in a disadvantaged background. I turned it around, and now I live in a situation of privilege. And since I started working on this heartful idea, my priority is to make a difference so that we can turn this country around. It's going to benefit all of us. You cannot change the whole Alex. You cannot change the whole Ivory Park. It's not possible, but you can make a difference. You can make a difference. Show me one school that Ramaphosa has built before he even became president, when he was worth 8 billion rand. One school that he has built. So the point I'm trying to make to everybody else today is, through this heartful journey, as much as I'm excited about breaking ground and starting to train these young people to restore law and order in townships, one thing that I've realized is that people are all talk. So most South Africans can talk, but they'll never take action, and the government knows it. You know, when you drive past a township, when you're on the N14 and driving past Deep Sloot and you look and you think, well, why doesn't the government do something about this place? That's all you're going to ask, but you'll never drive in and find out who is working on what project to improve what service that I can get involved in. We don't do that. So people are all talk and no action. And through this journey, that is what I've realized. So the one thing I want to leave you with is this. Number one, the ANC has brought us, more than anything else, lawlessness, where the law is like a suggestion. The law doesn't really matter. I mean, you see it at the Madlanga Commission. You see it with the arrests of policemen. You see it with people that are supposed to protect us, but joining criminal gangs and criminal syndicates. What the ANC has brought to this country, more than anything else, is lawlessness. Because until we restore law and order, we will not be able to turn this country around. My priority is to make sure that we can restore law and order in the streets, one street at a time. And once we can clean up and restore, then we'll be able to develop. You cannot create any jobs in an environment where anybody can break the law and there are no consequences. You cannot do that. But then the challenge that I'm bringing to you is, what have you done in your own personal capacity? Everybody always thinks they don't have enough. I used to think about that 10 years ago. But now when I'm looking at the future, I'm starting to understand that until each and every one of us take small actions, very small day by day actions to make a difference, we will not turn this country around. Until then, stay safe.